Welcome to the Special Education Essentials for Parents and Families podcast with your host, David Tollner. In each episode, we'll have guests who are professionals in the special education and disability services industry who support children with special needs. The law is complex, and this podcast does not cover all situations, legal responsibilities, or variations in different circumstances. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, and nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or the firm. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace legal advice. You can find this show on all the major platforms including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, tollnerlawoffices.com. Now, here's the host of Special Education Essentials for Parents and Families, David Tollner.
Yes, welcome everyone once again to the latest installment of Special Education Essentials. I am your host, David Tollner. I should probably get that out of the way. And we are very fortunate to have with us today the Director of Admissions at Fusion Academy, Danielle Beiser. And Danielle, before I bring you on, it's my practice to give some context to my guests, right? Because what you may not know yet, and it just came out, I think they just published it or disseminated it yesterday, which is the first 3 episodes of the podcast, which is my talking about how to improve the IEP of your child, right? And part of that for the listener is this notion that if things aren't going well in school, even with an IEP, and your child isn't making meaningful progress, there are options, right? And today, and when I say options, I mean private school options, special schools that are designed in some cases for your child. And so if a district, after many months or years, is really struggling to drive progress in your child, you really need to look in your community for programs like Fusion, because there may be a program like Fusion that can really change your child's life and the trajectory of their education, of course. And then, of course, we all know that that trajectory is very much related to their overall professional trajectory and their lives moving forward. So I bring Danielle to us today because she is the Director of Admissions at Fusion Academy, which is a go-to for me and has been for years. And I won't delay any longer because we're going to get into why over the next 30 minutes or so. And that's very important because there are Fusions all over the nation, and there are places like Fusion that are called something else, hopefully in your neighborhood. Knowing what's in your neighborhood is very important. What's in your community within 30 or 45 minutes away from home, because very often the answer to your child's educational progress exists there. And following the IEP process that I'm laying out will potentially allow you to get the district, because they're not doing their job, to pay for a school such as Fusion, which we're able to do many, many, many times here in NorCal, where my office is. All right, enough said. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. And tell us about Fusion, how you got into it and what it offers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just really appreciative for being able to spend time together. We work very closely together. And thank you for allowing me time to talk about this incredible organization. So I found Fusion through wanting to really align myself with a mission-driven organization. When I had first found my current position, I thought it was a unicorn. I was like, are you kidding me? It's in my neighborhood. It's in my backyard. I get to make some sort of positive impact on my community and the students here. And it really aligned with my own personal values and what I could bring to the table professionally. So really through wanting to align with an organization that really walks the walk through its mission, is how I came to Fusion. Now, Fusion itself is a fully accredited private one-on-one school. We serve students from middle school all the way through high school. And as I mentioned, we are a one-on-one school. So this means one student and one teacher learning in the classroom together. The mission of this organization is really what hit home for me. And we are providing a completely personalized one-to-one education that empowers students to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. That's a lot to bite off.
It really is. And to the extent you're able to accomplish that as well as you do is amazing to me and makes you such a wonderful resource for people like me looking to find schools that fit. Because not everybody, and in fact, we find more and more that very few are really comfortable in the old industrial school setting, right? 25, 30 kids in one room, all learning from a single instructor. That doesn't play well with everyone.
Sure. And for some students, they absolutely do thrive in that environment. And we want that for them.
Of course.
But for more and more students, we're finding that the traditional school model is just no longer the way that students are going to thrive academically. And, what really separates Fusion out from the traditional school model is that instead of one teacher splitting or dividing their attention in between a classroom of 20 or 30, students can feel either left behind or unseen or not receiving the right amount of support. This one-on-one model allows our teachers and our students to build the foundations of a relationship built on respect, interest, collaboration, emotional support, and all of that leads to significant academic success in the classroom.
Yeah, no question. And we hear it from the districts, of course, all the time. Well, anybody would do well with one-on-one, and there's some truth to that, right? I mean, it's hard to hear that and not say, yeah, that's probably true. But that we're not talking about any kid. We're talking about kids that can't learn, at least from my perspective. You have a whole different perspective. You can, and we'll get into later what the kinds of kids you serve. But from my perspective, I'm looking for a placement that works. And whether it's one-on-one or 5-on-1 or small classes or different modalities that are useful and that work versus what the public schools are giving, I don't really care. What I want is a program that works, right? That drives progress for this kid. And the beautiful thing about one-on-one, which I know we'll get into in detail, is the flexibility that allows. On so many levels, that's important for so many kids. Go at their speed, right where they are is where they get educated, right? The curriculum is right where they are. And then if they have any number of special needs that make it really hard to continue, right? Their anxiety raises even at Fusion and they have to take a month break. That flexibility to pick up right where they left off when they come back is huge. Speak to that, will you? Those kinds of things that Fusion brings to the education equation that is so valuable.
Absolutely. You definitely hit the nail on the head. We are one of the most personalized and flexible schooling options that a student could engage with. I mean, we have the availability to be flexible to any student's needs. That includes whether they're an athlete outside of the classroom, whether they have significant creative pursuits outside the classroom, or health concerns and considerations that they need to be able to manage. With a large percent of our population, we see students who have to juggle, whether it's medical appointments or outside support, whatever that could look like to a kid, because, our students really are, they experience a vast array of commitments outside the classroom for various issues. And we're able to schedule not only around any of their commitments or engagements outside the class, but as you mentioned, if a student needs to be away for whatever reason that is, that could be a health concern, that could be maybe they're experiencing some really deep depression, maybe they, need to take some time off because they are really anxious, whatever that looks like to that child, the class only progresses forward when the student is there. Again, back to that beauty of the one-on-one. If the student's not in class, the class is not going to progress. So as opposed to the traditional school model, we're not going to have 25 students progressing through the next 3 units of class and then one student being left to play catch up. So the beauty of the Fusion program is that the class just pauses, right? The student takes the absence and we pick up where we left off when their student returns, because they're not playing catch up with anyone else. And we've found that often reduces a lot of the school-based anxieties that our students are experiencing, right? How many times do we have the mountains of missing assignments or missed tests, or maybe we're having absences from school and the anxiety to return is significant? That doesn't exist here.
Yeah.
All of that school-based anxiety is just mitigated.
Yeah, I like to say one-on-one programming, and I do and use other one-on-one programs. Fusion, and this is important for the listener to know, is not the only one-on-one program. There's Lydian Academy and hopefully many others in your communities. And we'll get into a minute. There's also an online. So even if you don't have a Fusion brick and mortar school nearby, there's an opportunity for accessing the curriculum online. But what I like to say with all of those scenarios, the one-on-one schools, is that it cures a lot of ills, right? It's not just if you're anxious because you're in a room with 25 or 30 kids, so much so you really can't pay any attention. You're focused on everything else. Well, that goes away. It's just you and the teacher. If you have various attention issues, your ADHD, and you're all over the place, you can't focus for more than a minute at a time on the teacher, well, guess what? There's nothing else to focus on in that classroom, right? But that lesson. And the teachers are very good at making sure you're focused on the lesson before they move forward. You have medical issues that keep you out of the classroom a lot, flexible around time, right? You're at a curriculum level that is 2 or 3 years behind your classmates. Well, you're not in a class with 25 going light speeds ahead of where you are. You're going exactly where you are, right? Exactly at your speed. That combination, I have found, is remarkably supportive of so many different of my clients. And that's one of the beauty. And talk about that. I'm able to, if I think a Fusion will fit, I don't have to worry that Fusion's going to say, no, there's high anxiety, we don't deal with it. Or no, they're too, the behaviors are way too much. Now, behaviors might be a factor, but really they have to be significant for Fusion to say, because even behaviors are resolved largely in a one-on-one setting. We see kids that are all over the place behaviorally in public school that go to Fusion, and it's like, I'm sorry, what? Where did those behaviors go? Well, they're gone because that one-on-one setting is so valuable.
You're absolutely right. And again, us so well, you know who we serve, but
it's true. I really could give this talk, right? Because you guys are so good.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, just to echo, there are very few profiles of students who wouldn't be successful here. And the most significant one would be students requiring a significant level of behavioral intervention, active behavioral intervention, might not succeed here. And almost any other social, emotional, or learning difference or challenge is widely welcomed. And you're absolutely right in that sometimes students coming from other schooling solutions, their school could write an entire rap sheet of what the student is presenting or the behaviors that the student has presented. And they come here into this really loving, nurturing, positive, individualized experience. And we're like, wait, that kid? Are you sure?
Right.
You don't see that? Right. And it's just an entire positive change of environment where the student can feel seen, cannot feel anxious, cannot feel like, one in the sea of thousands of students. So oftentimes we do see a lot of those behaviors change for the good.
Yeah, no, sometimes we'll have kid will be at Fusion, we'll be asking the district to pay for it, and the district will want to assess. And they'll assess when the kid's been at Fusion for 6 months, and it's like it's a different kid because it's one-on-one and they have that support. So the behaviors are gone, the anxiety's gone, the progress we see is typically significant because the one-on-one definitely supports that. So yes, we can see very different kids in one-on-one settings than we do in other settings. And that can be life-changing, obviously, which is what you see every day and what I see when I send a kid there. Tell us about what else Fusion I mean, there's homework cafe, there's music, there's it's not just one-on-one, academics. There's the online program. Give us a better flavor of what it is. And because I know your humility will not allow it, I will say if you are living near a Fusion, to our listener, they're also beautifully set up, right? It's a very sophisticated feeling, very clean and yet attractive and engaging environment for the kids. It's not just one-on-one in a white-walled room. It's much more than that. So speak to that, Danielle, so the listener can get a feel for what you guys are about.
Absolutely. So a couple different things. The first, when I talk to a family who is interested in making a transition for their kids' academics, one of the main questions, concerns, objections could be, well, if I'm sending my child to a one-on-one school, how are they going to socialize? How are they going to make friends? What does that look like at a one-on-one school? And I know you can't hear it because I have my door closed and my headphones on, but there is like wild laughter going on outside my door. We have a beautiful space on every Fusion campus. There are 83 of us across the nation, 83 Fusion campuses. Every single campus has one of these spaces. It's called a homework cafe. And this is a beautiful space. It's usually like the heartbeat of the campus where students can come, complete their assignments, socialize, engage, play games, watch videos together. This space is supported specifically by what we call homework cafe teachers. The purpose of this space is to support students' executive function in assignment completion and their social skills when learning to engage with others. So this is a supervised, staff-held space where students are really putting into practice all of the social emotional learning skills that they're receiving inside the classroom as well. Now, this isn't a space for, reteaching very specific algebra equations. This is more executive function support, checking in with students, seeing what all they have assigned, what their to-do lists are, checking in with them every couple, 15 minutes or so, saying, hey, buddy, I saw you just came out of Spanish. What do you have going on? Awesome. How long do you think that might take you to complete that? Great. I'll circle back with you in 20 minutes, right? So this is really the heartbeat of every school. Socially, in addition, students have field trips every month and fun nights on campus. That could be a game night, that could be karaoke, anything that is, an activity that students will get together and do. So socially, every campus is different, right? Every campus has different activities going on. Here at Los Gatos, we have a phenomenal director of student life who puts together these amazing programs for our students. Yeah. On a larger Fusion scale, you hit on some great points. We have something called Fusion Global Academy, and this is our fully virtual school. It offers every single thing that we can offer at our brick and mortar schools, but fully virtual. And sometimes when parents, especially parents of students coming out of the pandemic, they hear virtual, they're like, oh my goodness, we are never going back to virtual again. And that is just not the case. This is not your student sits at a laptop in the dark and clicks through the pages. Right. This is you're paired with our same teaching staff one-on-one. They are engaging your student in the same way that they would engage them in a classroom, providing the same curriculum, the same units and chapters and assessments and the same academic experience. And Fusion as a company has created this beautifully engaging online community that we call the Global Neighborhood. So students who are attending fully virtual classes, they have an online homework cafe where they all can drop in. It's open for 14 hours a day all across the world. Students can drop in, they can meet new kids. There's, I think, over 7, maybe even 10 at this point, virtual clubs that students can join. They've built out a beautiful online community. And sometimes students need that. The student who is way too anxious to show up at a brick and mortar school, they're going to thrive in that virtual environment. They can make friends online where their anxiety level is lower and it feels safer. So, Fusion has done a phenomenal job with their in-person offerings at our beautiful brick and mortar campuses. And they've also created a really vibrant online community of students all across the world. I think 35 countries are represented at this point.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I can attest to all of that, of course. I mean, we're lucky in California where I'm settled that we have a lot of brick and mortar schools because for many of my clients, that's a net plus, right? Being able to go at least, right? It's like, the homework cafe is like the central plaza at a high school where everybody goes at lunchtime. And most kids want that, but not every kid can handle that. In fact, I have many kids that when they first start, it's months before they can bring themselves to go to homework cafe. Their anxiety, or they're on the spectrum. And so they're just inflexible in that way. And they just aren't comfortable in that setting because they have many skills they still have to learn. But they still do very well at Fusion. And then what I see, because I can only speak about my clients, is there is, if they stick with it, a slow acceptance of that setting to the point where then it becomes a driving force, right? Not only the academics and the education, but the social piece, because that's a huge piece to any academic experience, right? We don't send our kids to school just to learn. We send them to learn social skills. We send them, right, to learn how to interact with peers and compromise and all the things we want them to experience and be good at as adults. And it only has I wouldn't say a little bit to do with academics, but there's an awful lot that is, as important as academics when it comes to school. And Fusion allows that to flourish, which is always something I've appreciated for my clients. So the one thing I want to touch on, which I think is very important, is that it's different. I mean, most of every other, what I call specialty schools for kids with special needs, almost everyone is a full-time program by design. I mean, you don't go someplace else and part-time and then go to that school part-time. Fusion, one of the other things that makes it absolutely unique, and I suspect other one-on-one programs throughout the nation, I don't know this is unique to Fusion, but what's really valuable about it is that you can take one class there or two. And we have a number of clients that have a couple of classes at Fusion and the rest of their classes in public school, right? Or 3 or 4 classes in Fusion. And then the things they can handle in public school, electives, PE, things that don't drive them absolutely nuts, they will go to their public school for. So they get the best of both worlds while they're improving with their academics at Fusion. And that's a piece that we haven't talked about yet that is very valuable. The idea that you can, if you're at Fusion, bridge the parts of Fusion that you're taking advantage of, and then the parts of the public school system that you can handle if you're a student that really struggles in that setting.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as there is a really wide variety of students that we serve here, there's a wide variety of ways that families plug into Fusion. So similarly to other non-traditional schooling options, we do serve students full-time. Sometimes families come to us for full-time, all of their academics starting in 6th, and we have them all the way through high school graduation. Or maybe they start with us full-time in freshman year, and we have them all the way through 12th grade graduation. And we have a lot of families that choose that. But for the families who might want to come to us part-time or for some sort of hybrid enrollment, like David mentioned, they can do that. They can take some classes, maybe where there's a distinct challenge. That could be in geometry, that could be in chemistry. Maybe the student has dyslexia and their history and their English classes are the biggest pain points for them academically. They can take those with us and still remain enrolled in their school of record, whether that be a public school, private school, wherever it is they came from, and still graduate from those schools. So a dual enrollment is absolutely a fantastic option for a lot of students. And also, as you mentioned, families can come to us and just take one class. That could look like course remediation, maybe over the summer or throughout the school year. Let's say, student performed not as they planned to in one semester of a class. They can come to us over the summer and work really hard and try to achieve a different grade in that same semester of that course.
Right.
One thing that we haven't touched on, which is really interesting in that either hybrid enrollment, dual enrollment space, or even the single course for credit space, is we have some students who are considered twice exceptional who actually don't come to us for remediation. Quite the opposite. They come to us for acceleration, right? We've spent some time talking about students who might need a slower pace than their peers, but we also serve a lot of students who need a significantly accelerated pace than their peers. Maybe we receive a student who's in 7th grade, but doing 12th grade math, right? We need to be able to continue to challenge that student so that they stay engaged in their academics and don't check out. So that's also another great profile of a student that we can serve with either a dual enrollment or a course for credit experience.
No, that's good information for the listener, I think, because yeah, we do. We have a lot of 2E clients, and some of them with these splinter skills that are unique to, let's say, math, right? English is average, but math, because of the way their brain works, is off the charts. And they can't get that right in 7th grade, right? They're doing 10th grade math in a 7th grade public school curriculum, and they're bored to tears. And people wonder why they're acting up and not paying attention, because they couldn't be more bored. And Fusion has the capacity for even tackling those kids and supporting those kids, not just the kids that are on the other side of that spectrum, which are really struggling in a certain class, right, or with a certain subject. And again, I have a number of kids, and this is something I don't think the autism community is as aware of as they might be. And that's where I first, 20 something years ago, first cut my teeth with autism, right, in the special needs industry, if you will, or environment and education and all of that, is that Fusion works there, right? I mean, the one-on-one is very valuable there, because autism obviously comes with a level of inflexibility, sometimes some behaviors, and a lot of anxiety. We see a lot of comorbid issues with kids on the spectrum. And I have one kid right now who's doing the online class, and it's perfect. It is the only educational setting that student can handle, right? Will allow himself, and very often that's what Fusion gives me, is an option that I can't find anywhere else for my client, right? Who comes to me, mom and dad has said, listen, I've looked at everything you've suggested. None of that works. Most of them won't even take him or her, right? For whatever reason, doesn't fit their wheelhouse kid that they want to serve, and they do very well serving. And then now what? We're in a situation where there's nothing that'll work. And those out there who have been in that situation, have a child where nothing seems to work, you understand that is a very frustrating place to be. It's frustrating for me as their attorney to try and find, now what? All right, they came to me, they're paying my fee for me to create change in this student, and I can't, because I don't have any place to put them. Fusion and one-on-one is that outlier educational opportunity for kids that can't learn anywhere else, that's worth trying, because very often what we see is kids that really struggle in just about any other environment can do very, very well and make meaningful educational progress in a one-on-one setting. It's why tutoring one-on-one works, right? It's because we allow tutoring. We think tutoring is great. We think parents should all one-on-one with their kids after school every day, right? And all of that. But here's a school that really gets how important that is for so many of our students.
Yeah, and I truly think that I am so fortunate in this position, right? Because families, I'm either on the phone or speaking with families in person, and I get to be the person that says, we can help, right? Like you said, you're looking for solutions. You're looking for solutions for families that don't have them or haven't found them yet. And I have the great fortune to be able to engage with families and say, we are the solution, or we can provide the solution for your student. And oftentimes we're experiencing families who have had, years of appointments and clinicians and navigating support systems and navigating the educational system, right? So it's almost information overwhelm. And for them to come to our school, walk through our doors, and walk around our campus, you just see the shoulders lower and the smiles on their faces, and like, wow, my kid could really go here. I could see this, right? And so I that's my own.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, and then the laughter outside your door.
To be able to do that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. The laughter you're hearing, right? It's just an indication that things are going well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
right. And when we launch them into the next place, then we're like, yes, we did it.
Right. No, you're
Yeah.
not supposed to hate school. So if to the listeners, if your kid hates school,
Yeah.
that's a sign. And I know
Then
you know
let's do
that
it
you're probably
different.
not listening to this
Yeah.
if you don't have a child on an IEP, and you are unlikely to be listening to this if your IEP is doing very, very well. But for everyone else, and that's a big number, I'm afraid. Um, what I'm hoping in giving you this information is the idea that there are options, that education is not a one size fits all. We like to think it is. We certainly have planned for that nationally and even statewide. The system sort of thinks it's a one size fits all, um, you know, situation, but it really isn't. And it doesn't have to be, maybe is the way to put it, that there are options, and it behooves every listener, if you're struggling or your child is struggling to make meaningful progress in school, that you know what's in your community. You know what's online that's available that might work, but you also know what's brick and mortar in your community that you can access. Because hopefully, and I'm absolutely certain it's not true in every community, we're very lucky in NorCal. We have a lot of specialty schools. You have to go all the way to the East Coast to find other communities as lucky as we are in terms of having so many options. Even Southern California doesn't have as many options as we do up here for whatever reason. But knowing what your options are is hugely important, and Fusion becomes a very good option if you're fortunate enough to have a brick and mortar school in your neighborhood, and or the online program can work for your child. So take a look, go online, investigate, go see what's out there, and then make some decisions after that. Knowledge is power, and knowing what's in your community is a very powerful thing to know. All right. Well, Danielle, any final thoughts? I don't want, but we're at the end of our time, but that was very, very useful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any
thank
final
you so
thoughts?
much for having me.
Oh,
Thank you so much for
of course.
having me. And, through your many, many years of work in partnership with Fusion, I appreciate the chance to come on and chat about what we're doing. And again, express my gratitude for working for such a fantastic organization that is positively impacting thousands of kids' lives every day. So I feel like I have, I'm the lucky one here, right? But no, truly, if any family is watching this or listening to this and wants more information, please reach out. If there's not a Fusion near you, there is absolutely access to a Fusion, and we would love to support you and your family in any way.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Keep up the great work. You guys make it so easy on my clients. So, right. So that's what I'm having the people on first, and I'm sure I'll branch out as we get further and further into special education essentials. But there are specialty schools that make it easy, that are flexible, that go out of their way. I mean, Fusion is a for-profit company, but you would never know it by the way they interact with their parents and their kids. And that's the important piece, right? Yes, it's potentially, I've never seen it, but it's potentially about a bottom line, but that's not the way you interact with your clientele, which is very valuable to somebody like me. If I send a kid somewhere, I need to know it's going to work, because if it doesn't make me look good. So, and Fusion is always very, very willing to do whatever it takes to make it work for a student. And I can't think of a single time when I felt they didn't go over and above to make sure that once they said yes to a kid, it worked if they could do anything about it. And that, we want that in every school our kids go to, right? That the teachers and the administrators have that mentality, that passion for their students. And unfortunately, we don't see that everywhere. We see it a lot in public school. I love it. When I see it, I love it in public school. But I know I see it every time at Fusion, which is why you stand out for me. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for joining us. All right, everybody. We will see you next time. Thank you very much for joining us on Special Education Essentials. My name is Dave Tollner, and we'll be back soon with another installment. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
You've been tuning in to the Special Education Essentials for Parents and Families podcast with your host, David Tollner. This podcast is not intended as legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Please talk to your legal counsel about your own situation. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, tollnerlawoffices.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.